For more, we turn to Stephen Cohen. He's lived in Delhi and is the author of many books on India and South Asia. And Arvind Subramanian of the Peterson Institute, where he's an expert on Indian growth, trade, and development. And gentlemen, we thank you both for being here. Arvind Subramanian, let me start with you. India is accustomed to smaller blackouts, but this was of a different magnitude.
Yes, this was entirely different magnitude, 700 million people. But in some ways, the real tragedy, Judy, of this is the fact that this highlights the fact that India is chronically short of power. And that's been a problem for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And I'm hoping that this will shed the spotlight on that bigger and more persistent problem.
Chronically short of power? Is that what's behind this, Stephen Cohen?
I think that's true, but I think behind that is the fact that India, like China, shifting from a state-directed system of economy to one where enterprise operates on its own. And both countries are in a state of transition. Chinese have sort of a weird capitalist market system operating. Indians are moving in that direction. But so then they're in this transitional period where it's neither a market system that functions in response to demands, nor a directed system where the state can compel things to happen. That's still true to some degree in China, but not true in India. When it breaks down in India, we see it very clearly.
What's known to be the immediate cause of this? Is there something that triggered what happened yesterday and then today?
Yeah, as the report said, I think what happened was that because the monsoons have almost failed, it's a 20% deficiency of rainfall, so supply has come down because the water tables have dropped, hydropower, which is 20%. So in the face of this declining supply and demand growing, what happened was that some states, especially the agricultural states like Punjab, started overdrawing on the grid, and the grid was not equipped to handle that. So that tripped some line somewhere, and then that cascaded backwards, creating this big blow up.
So, Stephen Cohen, some of this, as I was reading today, it has to do with the states drawing more power than they're supposed to. How is that regulated?
It's not. That's the problem. There's no way of enforcing the states to stop drawing power that they shouldn't have, except to cut them off. And that may have been one of the triggers of this. In all these disasters, complex disasters, there are many causes. In this case, the action of the states, the absence of a market in coal and other energy supplies, failure of the monsoon, these are all contributing factors. At the bottom of this, I think, is politics. In a sense, India has too much democracy. There's too much democracy in the sense that the central government can't control these states the way they used to in the days of Nehru, when there was a single party at the center and the states. Yet they need the states. They need state parties to stay in power at the center. So they have to make concession to the state. They can't compel the states to do something. So in a sense, that's democracy, but it's a negative aspect of democracy.
How do you see that, the politics part of it?
I think it's more an imperfect democracy than too much democracy, because the fundamental problem with power in India is that if people were to pay for power, private investors would come rushing in to build an increased supply. But the point is that politicians find it politically opportunistic to say, we'll either give you no power or free power. We'll give you free power or subsidized power. And therefore people don't pay, and that's okay. About 30% of power generated in India is lost to theft and to free power. So
to theft.
To theft.
This is people. We saw the video. People just
plugging in the lines. People that, and then agriculture. The farmers are very powerful in India, so they get free and subsidized power, and it's proved to be environmentally catastrophic because water tables have dropped, the aquifers have dried up. So this is a situation where politicians basically think they can win elections by promising free power, but the tragedy is that it leads to all these very adverse outcomes.
Stephen Cohen, I think people also look at India and they see the incredible business progress that it's made, commercial progress, progress in education, and yet the infrastructure not catching up.
The business community are the first to say that the infrastructure is failing, that the government hasn't invested as much in infrastructure as they can. In a country that has so many billionaires, you ask, why isn't some of this money going to infrastructure? Partly it's politics, in the sense that the billionaires and the rich of India can protect themselves in the kind of taxation that would build up the infrastructure. And again, it's a question of political priorities. I'd say that India is an imperfect democracy, perhaps not too much democracy, but in an imperfect democracy, these decisions are being made on political calculations, not economic and energy calculations.
In this case, I think business is actually hurt by what's happening in power, because some people get very cheap power, and some people have to pay too much for power, and that's business. So, they're not.
There's a real imbalance.
There's imbalance, exactly. And so, what do? As the report showed, they acquire private generators, diesel-powered generators, to generate their own power, and that's again environmentally disastrous.
So, what does it take to change a system like this in terms of where India wants to go in the future?
Sometimes a shock like this will lead to a reform which would lead to major innovations and transformation of the system. I'm not sure whether the Indian system will respond in that way this time. We'll have to wait and see.
I'm a bit more hopeful on this, because what's happening in India is that some of the states are actually doing innovative things. The state of Gujarat, which is like India's China, has started implementing a system of power where the farmers have to pay for power, but in return they get more regular power. And that system, if it works, will help emulation by other parts of the country.
That's not in the region, though, where there is
that escaped because that's well run.
The blackout,
that's
because it's better
exactly.
run.
India is such a vast country that some of the states are doing very well, others are doing very badly. In a sense, a system where the states that are moving well should be rewarded and the states that are doing badly ignored if necessary is a system that has to be in place. But the problem is the political calculation depends on the number of votes, not on how well a state is doing economically. So some states that have a lot of votes which are doing badly in terms of policy are getting political rewards from the center.
So at the moment, as you look at what India aspires to be, what does this say about how difficult it's going to be to get there?
It's going to be very difficult to get there, because the demand for power is just outstripping the ability to handle that. But I think if we get some good, successful experiments in some of the states, like it's happening in 2 or 3 states, I think in principle that can spread, and that's, I think, the only basis for hope in India, because fundamentally the politics in New Delhi is not going to change very much.
I think there are 3 things that have to happen. The coal industry is a state monopoly. That has to be broken up. Secondly, they have to move on the question of nuclear energy. For political reasons, they block the importation of American nuclear power plants. Whether you like nuclear or not, they expect to have 25% of their power produced by nuclear in 15 or 20 years from now. They're not going to reach that goal. And thirdly, they need to work with regional states, other regional states, Nepal, Bhutan, even Pakistan, to develop a hydroelectric grid based on water power, which is environmentally secure.
Complicated and a stunning situation, and yet one that at least has drawn the world's attention.
I lived through blackouts in New Delhi. It's no fun.
Stephen Cohen, Arvind Subramanian, thank you very much. I appreciate it.